Steve Phelps gives his thoughts on the Austin Dillon situation. Denny Hamlin gets hit with a massive penalty, and Hendrick is suing one of their sponsors. So let's get into it. Coming up next. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing good today. All right, Steve Phelps has clarified his or NASCAR's position, depending on how you want to look at it, on the Happy Hour podcast with Kevin Harvick. Let's take a look at some of those comments here.
The difficulty as it relates to this specific incident, and I've heard from drivers over the years, I don't know where the line is. Tell me where the line is. Can you show me the line? I'm like, I can't show you the line, but you will know when it has been crossed, right? So if you hook someone going 170 miles per hour on a mile and a half track, you have crossed the line, and we are going to park you. And so we've been consistent. We've had 2 of those. Do we want to do that? We don't, but we need to make sure that we are keeping our drivers safe. And when you have a situation like that, it's not safe.
So you can see right there in that clip, he trots out the tried and true line of it's about safety, right? NASCAR uses this, in my opinion, because nobody's going to push back when you say it's about safety. Everybody's going to be like, on board, yeah, let's go. It's all about safety. Except that NASCAR only does this when it benefits them. And it's ironic that he does it on Kevin Harvick's podcast, of all places. Because if you'll remember, when this new car first came out, before they made the adjustments to fix it, Kevin Harvick was one of the biggest opponents of this new car, saying it was too stiff, it was too rigid, it was going to hurt people. But they didn't care about the driver's safety then, even when the drivers were actually saying something about the new car. And then even after drivers were getting injured in this new car, NASCAR said everything was fine, before eventually having to admit something was wrong with the car, and they fixed the car. So like I said, NASCAR uses the safety line when it's convenient for them, but they don't always follow through and worry about driver safety in every situation. So I don't think that this was actually about driver safety. He talks about it was all about the right hook, and the right hook is basically what got Austin Dillon the fine. And he said, to his credit, that they have been consistent with right hooks in the past. And I agree, since the playoffs have started, he has been consistent with right hooks. Right hook drivers have been suspended 1 race, and then they've gotten a playoff waiver. However, Austin Dillon was not suspended 1 race, and Austin Dillon didn't get a playoff waiver. So the consistency thing of it, yes, they have consistently penalized it, but they haven't been consistent with the penalty that they give out there. I think that's a fair question. It would have been hilarious if Kevin Harvick had hit him with either one of those questions that I just mentioned here. Furthermore, as it stands, the right hook rule, there is no rule against the right hook. It is still a NASCAR judgment call. What I would love to see, because I do agree right hooking is bad, just write an actual rule in the rule book because they said they don't want to discourage hard driving and aggressive driving. Write an actual rule in the rule book that clarifies what a right hook is. Credit to Lieutenant Smash here, who overseas works on race cars over there. And over there, they do have a particular rule in the rule book. It is basically if the left side tire is not in front of the B pillar, the little B post right there, if it's not in front of the B pillar, then it is considered a right hook. Anything in front of the B pillar with the left front tire, that is not considered a right hook. So there you go, just a clear-cut rule in the rule book. That way you don't have to worry about this imaginary line that you'll know when you've crossed it. I would like to see an actual rule in the rule book. Not only an actual rule, but a consistent penalty. Like, if you do it, you get suspended 1 race, and you get a playoff waiver, or you don't get a playoff waiver. Just like actually make it a black and white rule in the book. Because if you leave it up to NASCAR judgment calls, although a lot of people agree with this judgment call right here, a lot of people disagree with it. If you leave it up to NASCAR judgment calls, eventually NASCAR is going to get the judgment call wrong. And the reason I say that is even in a bunch of the responses to people who agree with this, a lot of people said, I agree with NASCAR's call here, but if it had been Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott, it would have been a different call. And that's what I'm saying. Just make it a rule in the rule book. That way you don't have to worry about NASCAR judgment calls.
Well, I'll take it one step further. If we hadn't penalized it, then I think what we would see over the next 12 weeks would look significantly different. And we just can't have it. It really comes down to what do you want your sport to be? Yeah. And that's why I think we ruled the way we did, because we're not Demolition Derby. We're just not. We are a sport that if we had done nothing, I think we would have opened ourselves up for a mess, honestly.
Yeah.
And in this clip right here, you see him say that NASCAR is not a demolition derby, and he has gotten roasted basically online. A lot of people saying if NASCAR is not a demolition derby and you don't encourage this type of stuff, A, why are we still talking about it 2 weeks later? Why did you wait basically till 2 weeks later to make some comments on this? B, why do we have green-white checkers if this is not supposed to be about a demolition derby? If it's about to be who was actually supposed to win the race, why do we have green-white checkers? Because it just sets up situations like this. And then in that same vein, you've seen people say, why do we have double file restarts? Why do we have, whatever. Go on down the line with it. But yeah, so NASCAR not wanting aggressive driving and stuff like that, I don't think is the case either. NASCAR loves this. They've milked this for every ounce of media attention they can get from it, so they can say what they want to. They do like this, even though they had to make a ruling here on Austin Dillon. And so, to be fair, a criticism of what I just said here, if it's not about safety, if it's not about being consistent with the right hook, and if it's not about turning this into a demolition derby, what do I think it's really about? What I think it's really about is the man that was 32nd in points wrecked for the win. I think that's what this is about. And NASCAR can't just come out and say that, hey, if you're 32nd in points, you can't wreck for the win to get into the playoffs, because we've seen people who weren't 30th in points wreck to win to get into the playoffs, and they were not hit with a penalty like this. So I think it's more about, like going back to the quote earlier, if Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott does this, it's not the same penalty as when Austin Dillon does this. But NASCAR can't come out and say that, hey, if you're not top 20 in points, you can't wreck for the win. But in my opinion, I think that's what this is all about, protecting the integrity of the playoffs. And on a side note, if something has integrity, does it need to be protected? But that's, whatever. And another side note, we get to talk about this one more time, so people get to get riled up about this nonsense one more time, because Austin Dillon's final appeal, whenever that gets decided, we'll have to talk about it again. This from J-Ski. The number 11 Joe Gibbs Racing Team and Denny Hamlin were issued an L2 level penalty for failing to meet NASCAR's engine seal requirements, the sanctioning body announced Thursday. The team was found in violation of sections 14.7.1 E and F and 14.7.1.1 B and E of the NASCAR rulebook. As a result, Hamlin and team owner Joe Gibbs were each docked 75 points and 10 playoff points, while crew chief Chris Gabeheart was fined $100,000. Sections 14.7.E states all race-winning engines will be long block sealed by NASCAR and must be completely inspected by NASCAR before the engine may be disassembled by the team. If the team chooses to use the long block sealed race-winning engine again before being inspected, the engine must be used in the same vehicle number the next time it is used. Section 14.7.1.F states the long block engine assembly seals of a long block sealed engine must not be altered, removed, or replaced. So a few things here. First off, this is a rough hit for Denny Hamlin. He had nothing to do with it. Rough hit for Chris Gabeheart. He really didn't have anything to do with it. Rough hit for Joe Gibbs Racing. They also really had nothing to do with it because TRD prepares and fixes all the engines. This was a mistake on TRD's part. The 75 points is a big hit for Denny Hamlin because he goes from 26 behind to winning the regular season championship. Now he's going to be over 100 points behind, so that takes him right out of his opportunity to win the regular season championship and the 15 or so bonus points that go with that. He's also losing 10 playoff points, which basically erases one of his wins on the season points-wise in the playoffs, so it's a big hit there. And then, man, Chris Gabeheart, he's the crew chief, and it's eventually going to fall on him. But damn, man, he's getting somebody else to fix the. He's getting somebody else basically to fix the engines, and he's getting a $100K fine for a mistake that they made. Toyota did issue a statement also from J-Skis, where I got this here. Toyota statement: as engine builder for our partner NASCAR Cup teams, TRD is solely responsible for handling and disposition of all of our engines pre and post race. Despite procedures being in place, Denny's race-winning engine from Bristol was mistakenly returned to our Costa Mesa facility, disassembled and rebuilt instead of being torn down and inspected by NASCAR per the rulebook. Although we know with absolute certainty that the engine was legal and would have passed inspection, we left NASCAR with an impossible position because we were not given the opportunity to properly inspect our engine. We have reviewed our processes and have implemented several additional steps to ensure that this never happens again. TRD takes full responsibility for this grievous mistake. We apologize to Denny, Chris, Coach Gibbs, the entire JGR organization, NASCAR, and our fans. Now, whether the engine was legal or not, that's going to be debated by NASCAR fans forever. It just depends on if you like Joe Gibbs Racing or don't like Joe Gibbs Racing. I will say this, though, in defense of it, it was Bristol. It was a tire fall-off race, so actually having a stronger engine might have hurt you in that particular situation. So if ever you wanted a hopped-up engine, Bristol was probably not the place to do it. If anything, you're probably putting the white rev limiter chips in there to save tire at a track like Bristol, whatever. But so they even getting caught with this at a track like that is even a bigger hit. And the fact that it's on TRD and it hurts Joe Gibbs Racing, that's a rough pill to swallow. Been a rough few weeks for Denny Hamlin here. And finally, Hendrick is suing Hooters for $1.7 million in, I guess, sponsorship money that they defaulted and didn't pay on. So we'll have to see how, plus interest. It is Hendrick. They're all about business. 1.7 plus interest. So we'll have to see how all that plays out. But yeah, that's all I got for you on this one. If you made it this far, I would love to have your subscription. If not, I'll keep making these things. If you're already subscribed, I appreciate you all as well. If you got a question, comment, or anything like that, leave it down in the comment section. I try to get to as many of them as I can. If you want to help out the channel by visiting the merch store, the link is in the description. Right now, if you buy a hat and then put a t-shirt into the cart, the t-shirt will be free. So if you want to jump on that, feel free to. All right, that's my spiel. Later. Peace.